Okay, so today we're gonna take a look at your knee pain. We're gonna try to think our way through some things. We are going to introduce what's going on, explain some dynamics, give you the two major reasons why this is probably happening, and then we're gonna go step by step and give you 5 exercises with explanations on how to address it. They're not all exercises, so don't feel overwhelmed. They're more like warm-ups and considerations and cues. So, to start with, so these are my notes, just ignore me looking down all the time. So to introduce this, right? So, like the elbow, the knee is a large, strong, not particularly mobile joint where a lot of forces are transmitted, whether that be from the floor into the feet, through the knee to the hip, or from, let's say, the spine all the way down through the hip into the knee, which can then transfer forces into the foot and into the floor. That's going to depend on the motion that we're talking about, but today we're going to talk about squats in general and squat-like patterns, because those seem to be what bother you the most. So before we get into that, I want to explain a couple things. So when it comes to the knee, because it's so large, it's stable and not particularly mobile, these symptoms and pains usually manifest in the large joints, right? There's a lot going on, but again, not a lot of motion. So the problem usually starts upstream, usually the hip, maybe the spine, or downstream in the foot. So, in my opinion, for our sport particularly, the hips follow the feet, because if we can get our feet, or rather, if our feet are not working appropriately, what ends up happening is then the knee defaults to some poor mechanic, and then from there, the hip defaults from poor mechanic. You can have the strongest hip muscles all day long, but if you're not using your feet correctly, you can't express those peak torques. So I personally enjoy taking a look at the foot, working our way up in general. And just for today, that's what we're gonna do. So one other thing I wanted to mention was one of the reasons, and very likely the reason, why your knee sleeves tend to help, and I actually have the same thing, I do most of my warm-ups with my knee sleeves, is because one of 2 reasons. When we have even just a light pressure around the muscle, what ends up happening is we're essentially, in a very neuromuscular kind of way, taking the insertion, or rather the insertion from the patella and kind of moving it up. So the line of pull is slightly higher, and that's where the peak forces are going to go through. Now, the other part of that is a little bit of pressure actually gets some neuromuscular facilitation, so that's going to downregulate pain, upregulate our ability to express force. So at your level, it's actually going to become very important, and I wish I did this earlier, because now I'm battling my way through the same thing at a higher level, is we want to get you strong and comfortable squatting and doing most of your workout without knee sleeves. You'll use your knee sleeves, but we want to get you to a position where you don't have to use them. That's the important part. So a lot of this will require no knee sleeves, but when it gets to the heavier weights, of course, we're going to use knee sleeves all day. So one of the 2 biggest reasons that you might be having this pain is your squat timing. And what that means is, like we briefly talked about earlier, when we break at the knees and the hips, whether that be knees first, knees and hips, hips then knees, everyone's different. There is a sweet spot for everybody, but in general, we try to do both at the same time. But sometimes what happens when we bias the knee break too much, we kind of slide forward, and then all of a sudden, our ankles no longer have any room to move. And so our knees can't move forward anymore. We gotta find room, whether that be in our hips, our spine, something. We're gonna pancake. We're gonna find a way to get to that depth. Now, for you, I think the wider stance is gonna help. I also think that having your feet slightly out, being able to sit your butt just behind your heels, letting those hips really opening up. It's gonna let you just plop right into it. So what I want you to focus on in terms of timing is going to be a very slight break at the knees first, and then a sitting back pattern. And that's all we're gonna focus on there. Knees first, slight sit back. The reason I'm not gonna harp on that too much is because the next part, the foot mechanic discussion, once you master it, it's gonna manifest in a considerably easier timing differential, meaning you'll be able to control your timing and you'll really feel where you have to be. So keep the timing in the back of your head, but that's not the big part of this discussion. So, for the hips, I do want to run you through some ways to differentiate where your restrictions are, if you have any. And so all you have to do is take your hip, seated, kind of raise it an inch or two off the ground. You're gonna externally rotate, bring it to neutral, and internally rotate. And then you're gonna send me videos of that. I'm gonna be able to roughly determine where your deficits are, and then we can move on from there. But it actually doesn't quite matter which one is the problem, because the exercise I'm gonna show you right now, called the 90-90 hip transfer, is gonna cover both at the same time. This is actually something I do for every lower body warm up, and honestly I do this throughout the day just because my hips get gnarly from sitting so much. So let's give that a shot. Let me just move this. Hopefully you can see. So all you're gonna do is sit on the floor, and you're gonna have your feet out roughly here, right? Something like that. You're gonna have your knees and your hips roughly 90-90, and you're gonna kind of post back with your arms, right? You're gonna take one leg, bring it to the side, and you're gonna bring the other leg, bring in that same direction. So it's gonna be like this. And you're gonna be rotating about your heel. So it's gonna be like a here and here. So the important part with this is going to be twofold. One, you're gonna maintain a nice neutral spine. You're gonna do a light brace so your ribs go down, down. You're gonna maintain that rib position. And you're gonna try to keep your butt planted where it is. And that's where the hip transfers come. And now, once you get to the internally rotated leg, your butt might try to come off of the ground. Don't let it. Sit on it, sit on that butt, and push that leg into the ground. Go back to the other side. You might feel a nice stretch. Chill there for a second, and then come on back. After doing 10-15 reps of this, nice and controlled, that's the point, you're gonna start regaining that motion. This way it's gonna hit your internal rotators and your external rotators. Really get you warmed up and allow you to open up those hips. So the next part is the foot stuff. So feet, very complex, and we have to simplify it for practical purposes. So in general, the foot does 6 basic motions, right? It can go up, it can go down, it can invert, it can evert, and it can AB and AD duct. Boop and boop. I know that looks really similar to inversion to eversion, but it's not quite the same. And so the most important part, because that's the ankle, is when we talk about the foot and the arch. So you mentioned active feet before, and that's awesome. So I'm gonna assume that you already know how to do an active foot. I also have other videos on how to do that, so I can refer you to those as needed. So when it comes to the squat, something I want you to try, let me do this right here, is just standing barefoot. Don't do anything with your feet, right? Just kind of chill, take your knees and try to rotate them out. Now relax. Take your hands, place them on your butt, and do the same thing. Just take your knees, rotate them out. Might feel a little bit of a contraction, not a big deal. And if you like half squat down with that, take your hands, you can move your knees, right? Don't let your knees beat you, but you can pretty much move them freely. Now, when we use the active foot, active foot meaning you take that arch, you lift that arch, and here's the key. You push the medial foot, the arch side, into the ground. People always say, 1, 2, and 3 contact points, which yes, that's how we're supposed to lift. But what ends up happening is a lot of people try to just force their knees out as a cue, and I hate that cue because all it does is just get a little bit of abduction, and then everyone's on their lateral foot. All of a sudden they lose their foot pressure. And what did we say in the beginning? Poor foot pressure / poor foot mechanics, can't control your knees, hips, doesn't matter how strong they are, they can't express their peak torque. And I'm gonna prove that to you in just a moment. So, what you're gonna do, once again, get that nice active foot, really hammer that arch. Put the pressure on the medial foot, and your foot might look like it does this. Boop. And that's not great, but we're not gonna worry about that because the next part is going to be what changes everything. So grab your arch, medial pressure, and then keeping the 3 points with the biased medial pressure, you're gonna use your hips and your glutes to then rotate that knee out. So arch, medial pressure, rotate. Got it? Okay, so let's put that together. So when we just stood up before, and we were just kind of loosey-goosey, half squatting, pushing our knees out, right? Very easy to move. Now, active feet, medial pressure. Now use those glutes to rotate out. Now feel your butt. Huge difference, full contraction because you're using your feet. Now, relax, do it again, active feet, medial pressure, then rotate out, keeping that medial pressure. Half squat. You can't move these knees, no way. And if you have weak hips or weak abductors / weak glute medius, which plenty of people get diagnosed with, it's generally not a glute med weakness. It's a glute med lack of activation, meaning like proprioceptively, and it's usually the problem comes from the foot. So we're gonna put all this together in just a few moments. So there's the glute torque. All right, so putting it all together. So we talked about the timing. The timing is gonna manifest like 75–85% through just using your feet properly. So if we were to, sorry, I'm making a mess here. If we were to take our squat stance, active feet, make that arch, medial pressure, rotate out, ready to squat. Our hips are already primed to open. So all you have to think of is not knees out, but knees forward, and place that butt behind your heels. All of a sudden, the timing took care of itself. I'm at my max dorsiflexion. My knees are as flexed and in the hole as possible. I have all this glute torque. I'm up. I could even go lower if I needed to, but you don't have to. And that's that. So, conversely, there is one limitation with this, and that's why I addressed the hip 90-90 hip rotations or hip transfers initially, is because we hammer external rotation all day, right? And that is something that we just cued. It's very important. However, how do I say it? So, in complex terminology, osteokinematically, the hips actually require, the squat rather, requires hip internal rotation capacity in order to express its external rotation capacity. Because when you think about your squats, if you can't internally rotate or maintain that, and you can only do this all day, you're not gonna have enough force in your hips to then use your feet to the best of its ability to then again express that hip torque. So if you're lacking internal rotation, you can scour some videos that have other internal rotation stretches. So I don't want to see your feet out like this, because then even if you do everything correctly, get that foot arch, medial pressure, externally rotate, when a muscle, you're gonna have all the room in the world to get down here, right? But you can't squat from there. there's no, this, regardless of the foot, is actually very easy to move. And that's because by having the hips fully abducted, fully externally rotated from the beginning, with few exceptions, there are some exceptional individuals with strange anatomical anomalies, but for the most part, you want the feet as forward as possible with some deviation. So somewhere between like 45 degrees and perfectly forward is roughly where we ought to go. One of my favorite things to do is ask, how are you comfortable squatting? They'll tell me or show me. I'll have them march or jump in place and then stop. And then I'll have them do a bodyweight squat. And I'll take their feet from where they are and just internally rotate them so the toes move maybe an inch. So if I'm like, as a bad example because I actually work on my intro rotation. Let's say I landed like this. Well, where do we want to squat from? Slightly internally rotated. So we're just gonna go boop. Now, the whole glute torque thing, feeling the butt, arch, medial pressure, externally rotate from an internally rotated position, is really gonna express that torque. The problem is, when you're all the way out here, the muscle's already on short. And so while it can contract maximally, it's a static contraction. It's not a dynamic contraction. And so what ends up happening is you can't express those torques because it's already there. I know that's very confusing. We can ignore that part for now. So that aside, to recap, we have the, oh, I meant to show you the quad stretch. So the quad stretch is going to be, you're gonna grab like a table. You can also do this on the floor, but a table, a bench, it all works. Take your foot, you're gonna go bam. You're gonna sit on it. Now, what you're gonna have you do is use your hands to base out, lean back, try to push this knee down. Keep leaning, keep leaning, keep leaning. You might have to rotate this way or that way, but eventually you'll feel it where that pain is. So get like a 4 out of 10 tension, and then you're gonna attempt to extend your leg, like a leg extension. And you're only gonna give it 5% contraction to extend. So, one more time. You're gonna put your foot on the bench, sit back, find where you need that stretch. There it is. Push into the table, push the back of your foot into the table as if you're doing a leg extension, just 5%. Count to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you're gonna relax into it. Count to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you're gonna get another rep. So contract, just 5% contraction for 5 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then relax 10 seconds. All we're trying to do there is just down-regulate some of the tightness in there and some of the tonal issues. And then to add on top of that, which I'm going to program for you, but also feel free to warm up with them after you do the stretch. It's going to be just regular old hamstring curls. I don't remember what kind of machine you guys have, but just regular old hamstring curls. And if you want to do body weight, you can do that too. Set of 20, do the other side, set of 20. You're gonna get 2 sets of 20 on both sides. What that's gonna do is reciprocally inhibit the quad here. So it's gonna downregulate pain just a little bit more. So to recap everything. 1, we do the quad stretch that we just did. Let's do this guy right here. So you contract, 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 relax. 3 sets of 5 contractions / 5 relaxations, followed with 2 sets of 20 leg curls, hamstring curls, body weight or on the machine. We're gonna go over the feet one more time. So you're gonna take your foot, you're gonna arch it, active feet, medial foot pressure, rotate out. Really contracts those glutes very nicely. We can also do the 90-90 hip transfers as we warm up. And then tempo warm-ups. So when you're doing everything, warming up, take your time. Get your feet active, do your thing. Really just go slow with the bar. Feel out what you need to feel out. You'll eventually get to where you need to go. Once you get it the first time, you're gonna mess it up the next time. But then you come in next week, you're gonna get it first time, second time, maybe the third time, fourth time, maybe not so much. Come in the following week, you're gonna get the first time, second time, third time. You're gonna really build that motor pattern. It's gonna all come together. It's gonna down-regulate your pain. You're gonna be a squat monster with the healthiest knees. If you have any questions, let me know. Sorry that this is so long. There was a lot to address.